Today, we are talking about everybody's favorite topic, tools. More specifically, the tools you need to get started working on older Harley Davidson motorcycles. I'm going to show you all of my essential tools that I cannot live without, and I'm going to leave out all of the junk I bought over the years so that you don't end up buying a whole bunch of stuff that you never use. I'm Grease, you're watching Grease's Garage, and I'm going to help you skip the struggle. The place I want to start today's video is with a shout out to a subscriber of mine named Aaron. Aaron sent me an email asking for this exact video. He just bought a shovel head and he doesn't have a bunch of tools for working on older Harleys. So he was wondering what tools should he buy to work on these bikes, and also, perhaps just as important, what tools should he not buy? Tools that are just going to end up laying around the shop, taking up space, and wasting your money. So I want to thank you, Aaron, for writing to me, requesting this video, and I also share this story as a reminder to the rest of you watching this video. Aaron sent me that email last week. In the very first video that I made after receiving that email is this video right here. The reason for that is because I spend a ton of time researching what topics you guys want to see. My promise to you from this channel is that if you request a video, so long as I have the capacity to film the topic you're interested in learning about, that's what I want to shoot. I don't want to shoot videos that you don't want to watch. So if you have something you're struggling with, please shoot me an email, greasesgarage@gmail.com. Let me know what it is you want to see, and I'll be happy to get it into the rotation. One other shout out I want to put at the beginning of this video is to my buddy Kevin Barton. His handle on Instagram is Barton's Wrench, which I will put right here so you can find him. He, unlike myself, is a professional mechanic and gets into a lot more projects than I do. So before making this video, I asked him for his list of items he can't live without, many of which are included in today's video, some of which are not, because my channel is more aimed at people doing their first, maybe second or third build, whereas Kevin gets into some much deeper projects than the average garage mechanic. So thank you to Kevin. And if you are in need of a professional mechanic and you're here in New Hampshire like I am, make sure you give him a follow, hit him up. He is one of my go-to guys for questions with everything related to motorcycles. Super good dude, go check him out. Let's start out with the hand tools. And the reason we're gonna start with the hand tools is because I think if you listen to nothing else in this video, the one thing I want you to hear is that buying the highest quality set of sockets and wrenches that you can buy is an investment that you will never regret making. So let's talk about the socket set that I invested in. This right here are the sockets that I am using. Now you can see from the logo on the front here, this set is made by Snap-on. This set goes from 1/4 inch at the smallest all the way up to 7/8 at the largest. And as you can see here, these are 6-point sockets, and trust me, this is what you want, a 6-point socket set. You will get 12 points for a couple things, but it's not as key to buy a high-end 12-point because you just won't end up using them that much. But for your main set, 6-point socket set is what you want. Buy it from a good company. These, again, are from Snap-on. But if you look closely here, you can see this is not a matched set. See how this one's taller than the rest of them, and so is this one at the end? I bought this on eBay for about 200 bucks. And those of you who follow Snap-on closely might recognize, I'm sure the camera can't pick this up, but these are the cursive font Snap-on socket sets, which means these are much older. So somebody owned these tools and used these tools before I bought them. And even secondhand, these blow all my other socket sets out of the water. So I checked eBay before making this video. These sets are available. Some are matched, some are not matched. In your day-to-day use of the tool, it really does not matter. So go to eBay and save some money, or buy it brand new from Snap-on if you have a dealer near you, or go from another USA-made brand like Cornwell, Mac, or whoever you prefer. But go high-end on your 6-point socket set, because trust me, the pains of a low-quality socket set will exist far beyond the joy of the couple bucks you saved on a low-quality socket set. Next set of hand tools that I highly recommend investing in is these guys right here. These are Allen sockets. Allen sockets in particular are some of the most likely fasteners to strip out, at least in my experience. Now, I couldn't tell you why this is, but it seems to me like if I was going to strip a bolt, the Allen head bolt was always the one that would end up stripping out on me. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 piece set. It goes from 1/8 all the way up to 3/8. 3/8 is key because when you're setting your timing and you're looking for your advanced timing mark, you have to remove a bolt in the center of these cylinders, and it takes a 3/8 fastener. Just love a good set of these. I bought this one on eBay as well. I think I paid around 150 bucks. This one is a matched set. Not that I really care whether it is or isn't. I don't care what year it was made. I just care that it was made by a reputable company and has a nice tight fit on all of the bolts. This next socket set is one that you may or may not need depending on what you've got on your bike, and that is a set of Torx bits. These are also referred to as star bits, and I've heard them called a couple other things, but I'm not going to repeat it because just call it one of those. It's already established for you. Now this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 piece set, also a snap-on set. The T27, I'll tell you right off the bat, T27 is a very common fastener on Harley Davidson motorcycles. I believe it's for your primary drain plug and also for the cover if you have a closed primary. I believe that's also a T27. In addition to that, a lot of Harley forks have Torx fasteners on the pinch bolts. So having a good quality Torx set is key. If you buy the socket set, the Allen head set, and the Torx set, it will be the last time you ever buy any of these tools. Now this particular set, again, is a matched set, and this one I bought through a buddy of mine who has a Snap-on dealer who comes to his work. I actually don't have access to a Snap-on dealer myself. So shout out to my buddy John Luke at Stay Strong Co. LLC. He's also the guy who made the kicker pedal for my bike, that black and orange custom kicker pedal. If you're in the market for one of those, make sure you hit him up. I will put his handle down below here so you can get in touch with him. Almost forgot to mention, this set goes from T27 at the smallest all the way up to T55 at the largest. Now that we've covered all the sockets, we need to talk about the ratchets themselves. Now, when it comes to the ratchets, it is not as important to buy a super high quality ratchet as it is to get a super high quality socket, because in the end, really all the ratchets kind of do the same thing. They're applying the torque. That being said, I was working on a project a few years back with a buddy of mine, Nick across the street on Instagram, who, as you might imagine, lived across the street from me. We were working on this Jeep project, and after we were done with the project, he was kind enough to gift to me my first nice ratchet. And let me tell you, it changed the way that I feel about ratchets forever. What he gave to me was this guy. This is a Snap-on ratchet with a flex head at the end. Now, I will be totally honest with you. When he first gave this to me, I thought two things. One, I thought I would not like this flex head because I thought it would move around too much. And I also thought that the ratchet was going to be too long. I could not have been more wrong. Nick is a guy that has worked on many more vehicles than I probably will ever work on in my entire life, and he knew more than I did as far as what ratchet you are going to want to have. So this right here became my favorite ratchet. If I were to lose this ratchet tomorrow, I would replace it immediately with the same one. There's nothing I would change about this ratchet. I absolutely love it. And the action on this thing, listen to that. It's just buttery smooth. Now, do you need a $150 ratchet like this one? Probably not. But is it nice to have? Absolutely. Now, as nice as that ratchet is, there are some situations where it is a little too big to fit in there. And for those situations, I picked up this little guy. Still a 3/8 drive ratchet, but this is Snap-on's mini ratchet. The product number on this one is FK80. Highly, highly recommend this little guy. This is actually the ratchet, probably too expensive a ratchet to keep in your tool roll, but I keep it in there anyway. This is the one that comes with me out on the road. I cannot live without this little ratchet. I think the ergonomics are perfect for my size hand. I told you how important it was to invest in a good quality socket set. All of those socket sets I showed you are 3/8 drive. So I have to have the mini, but with the 3/8 drive. Also buttery smooth. Love this little ratchet. The last thing I'm going to show you regarding the ratchets is these two guys right here. This is a small extension and this is a large extension. The large one is about 10 inches. This one is about 3 inches. These are crucial. Now, I can say with 100% certainty, you do not need to buy high-end versions of these. The cheap ones that I have, these are both Harbor Freight. They work fine. I'm not going to tell you need a snap-on extension. It really does not matter. Trust me. The 10-inch extension. This one is key because this is how I get my carburetor off. I stick this one through the cylinders. It lets me get the Allen bolts off of the back of my carburetor. This is also great for getting the exhaust nuts off. If you notice on the end of this guy, it has what they call a wobble extension. You can see it's not squared off the way this one is. The wobble is great. Really great. For your 10-inch extension, I highly recommend you get a wobble version. And then for your mini extension, most of the time I actually prefer this one not to wobble, because if I'm working on something where I only need a small extension, I really don't need it to pivot back and forth. It's probably just a little further that I can reach with the ratchet. And for those situations, it's nice for it not to spin on you. Now that we're done talking about the sockets, we got to talk about the other half of that equation, and that is these guys right here, the wrench set. Now this is a snap-on 6-point wrench set. You can see right here, this is a 6-point wrench. That is what I recommend you buy. Do not buy a 12-point set of wrenches. For your high quality set, the one that you're making the investment in, I really, really recommend you go 6-point, because most of the fasteners on your bike are 6-point. And it's always better to go 6-point wrench to 6-point fastener. This set right here goes from 3/8 up to 3/4. For me, that's done pretty much everything I need. I don't think I have any 7/8 fasteners on that, and half the time if I do, I just use my 7/8 socket. So get a good high quality wrench set. You will have those wrenches forever. I use these things for everything. Old rusty fasteners on bikes, they work great for that. They work great for old rusty plumbing fixtures that I'm working on in the house. I got these 2 years ago. I've used them consistently. I will probably never buy another set of wrenches in my life. Now, the last section of hand tools here is screwdrivers. Now, as you can see here, I have a mismatched set of screwdrivers. These are just various screwdrivers I've collected along my time building bikes. And I'll be honest with you, this is probably the next thing I'm going to buy, is a good high quality set of screwdrivers that are all matched, so that I can tell at a quick glance whether it's a flat-headed or Phillips. Good sets, you know, they have it written on the bottom, so you can see when they're sitting in whatever holster you keep them in. You just know what you're grabbing. I do want to buy a good set. I know Klein makes a good set. I'm not sure it's worth buying Snap-on for this, because I've gotten by so long with these mismatched hodgepodge ones that at this point it's probably more aesthetic and just to be able to tell at a glance. So get a good matched screwdriver set, but don't break the bank on that. The next category we're going to talk about is diagnostic tools. This is basic stuff that you need to tell if there's a problem with the bike. You probably know the one I'm going to mention first, because I hammer this drum hard on this channel, and that is a multimeter. This is a Harbor Freight multimeter. This is a Harbor Freight multimeter. There's 3 more Harbor Freight multimeters floating around this house. I've got one for the house, one for the truck, one for the shop, one for my tool roll. These things are everywhere. They're $7, and they will save your life. I don't work for Harbor Freight, okay? I just think it's so easy to get these things. They're right at the checkout counter. You can't leave Harbor Freight, and I know you're at Harbor Freight because I'm at Harbor Freight. We all go there. There's stuff you spend money on. There's stuff you don't need to spend a ton of money on. This right here is one of the things you don't need to spend a ton of money on. Half the time, it's going to be set to DC volts 20, and you're going to be checking whether you've got battery voltage at the end of a line. If you want to know how to use one of these things, click on this video right here where I'll show you how to test your stator, your coil, and your battery all in under 10 minutes with that multimeter. The next diagnostic tool that I think is so important for you to own is this guy right here. This is a Harbor Freight compression tester kit. This thing was like 30 bucks. I will also leave a link down below for an Amazon version in case you don't live near a Harbor Freight and you don't have one you can pick one up from. Just a quick reminder, the links down below are affiliate links, which means you pay the exact same price that you would pay if you ordered it on Amazon yourself. But if you use my link, I make a couple bucks, which helps me continue to make these free videos for you. This compression tester is so important. I cannot tell you how many times somebody has written to me saying they're having a problem with their bike, and I say, what is the compression on the front cylinder versus the back cylinder? And they say, oh, I don't have a compression tester kit. Go buy a compression tester kit. It is the best 30 bucks you will ever spend. This right here is what told me last year that I needed to do a top end on my bike because I had 120 PSI on the rear cylinder and about 50 on the front cylinder. That thing was junk. So without this kit, I wouldn't have known that, and I would have been chasing my tail wondering if it was my carb or the electrical system. It was the compression. Always, always, always test your compression. If you want to see a video on how to test your compression, click on this video right here where I will show you how to do that and a couple other tests on your bike. All right, guys, we're getting into the specialty tools now. I really got to psych myself up for this one. One, because it is freezing cold down here in the shop right now. I'm up here in New Hampshire and we are getting that cold weather rolling in fast. And two, because it's going to be very controversial. All right. I'm going to start this off by saying I am not a professional mechanic. I am just a guy who builds choppers in his garage, who built this particular bike, and these are the tools that I used for it. So the first specialty tool you are going to need is a torque wrench. Now, this guy right here is the one I'm using. This right here is a super high-end Harbor Freight torque wrench. This is the torque wrench that I used to put this bike together, and I know a lot of you guys are probably screaming at your screen saying, how could you use a Harbor Freight torque wrench? It's not even accurate. Well, for me, it was plenty accurate. The fasteners I use, the sockets I use, they are all top of the line. But the torque wrench itself was definitely on the lower end. And I actually did a whole top end job on this motor using this Harbor Freight torque wrench and this smaller torque wrench, which is made by Tecton. It's a Tecton torque wrench. This is I believe it's a 1/4 inch, yeah. This is a 1/4 inch drive, which I actually hate because none of my sockets are 1/4 inch drive. So I actually put an adapter on this to bring it up to a 3/8. The only reason I have this smaller torque wrench and that I advise you to get a smaller torque wrench is because if you're doing motor work, you're going to find that some of those fasteners have too light of a torque spec to hit with your larger torque wrench. So I had to get a small torque wrench for the things that take inch pounds and then a higher rated torque wrench for all the foot pounds. So you're probably going to end up needing two. This one's available on Amazon. I'll put the link down below. Again, that's an affiliate link. Please do use that link. It helps my channel. And the Harbor Freight one, you can get at Harbor Freight, but I'll put the Amazon Tecton equivalent of it in the links down below. Next specialty tool on our list are these guys right here. This is a set of dog bones. And this is for a variety of different sizes. Now, if you've never seen a dog bone before, let me take one of these off here for you. Essentially what it is, this right here is where your ratchet would go. I actually have a ratchet here we could pop in, right? It goes on here like this, and it just allows you to get this ratchet onto something that this ratchet head is too big to fit into. So a couple examples of this. One is on my bike, my tappet blocks. The tappet blocks are right at the base of the push rods, and they're just too tight of a space for me to fit this into. But if I put this little dog bone on here, now all of a sudden I can reach just this tiny little part onto the fastener and still be able to operate the ratchet. Another key situation that you would need a dog bone for is if you're a shovel head owner or a pan head owner. The fasteners at the base of your cylinders are not going to be accessible with a wrench or with a ratchet. You need these little dog bones to get in there. So a good dog bone set is crucial to have. I'll put an Amazon link to these. You can also get just 3 of these that are important. I think it's 7/16, 9/16, and 5/8. They sell that set on lowbrow because they know that shovel guys need them to get their cylinder heads off. Another key thing that I use a dog bone for, when I was doing the top end job on my motor and I was putting the bolts back into the tops of the heads, I couldn't get a ratchet onto the furthest back bolt that is directly below the backbone. I had to use a dog bone in order to get the torque wrench onto it. Next up on our list of specialty tools is this guy right here. This is a clutch hub puller. You can see it's got this nut at the end here, and then this little guy that swivels on the end. What this does is it allows you to break your clutch basket off of the spline that it sits on. Trust me, This is a $36 tool, I believe, that you cannot go without. If you own a Harley, you need this tool because this will save you from having to take your bike to a mechanic or, more annoyingly, to continuously call your friend and ask them to borrow theirs over and over and over again when it's only 36 bucks. Just buy the clutch hub puller. You can see there's a very strange Swiss cheese pattern on this. This is because it fits everything. It fits a 3-stud hub, it fits a 5-stud hub like what I have, and it also fits a 10-stud hub that insane people have. Why would you want a 10-stud hub? I just don't get it. That's a topic for another video. I'm not going to go on a rant right now, but it fits everything. Go pick one of these guys up. In conjunction with that clutch hub puller, another clutch related tool that you're going to want to have is this guy. This one is made by Lowbrow Customs, and what this does is this is a primary blocker tool. So when you're trying to remove the front pulley nut, you need this guy. This wedges into your clutch basket and keeps it from rotating as you break that pulley nut. This is a super cheap tool. I think it's 12 bucks or less. Just add this to your cart. Next time you're buying something from Lowbrow, buy this with it. You will thank me later. Don't try to stuff a t-shirt in there or stuff a hockey puck in there. Just get the tool and skip the struggle. Now, as I was showing you that primary blocker tool, I was saying that you would need it when you were removing your front pulley nut. So naturally, the next thing we're going to talk about are the sockets that you'll need to remove your front pulley. And I'm actually going to give you 2 different sizes. This right here is your compensating sprocket, right? This is on my stock Fat Boy. This is what I had to remove in order to get that pulley off. Now on this stock compensating sprocket, you are going to need a 1.5-inch socket. That's what fits on there, and that's going to let you back this nut off. So for those of you that are running a stock setup, 1.5 socket is what you need. Quick note on that. Most sockets that are that large, a 1.5 inch, are going to have a super large drive. So you're also going to need an adapter for this guy, which I'll show you on the next socket we're going to talk about. This next socket is a 1 5/16 socket. Now this is the one that I use. I have the BDL belt drive. I have an open primary on mine. That socket is a 1 5/16. So unlike the stock setup that you might be running, I use a 1 5/16 socket. And this is what I need to get the front pulley nut off of my setup. And on this one, you can see my socket, just like the socket I showed you a second ago, is a 3/4 drive. So what I've got here is an adapter that goes from 3/4, pop that in there, takes it down to 1/2 inch, right? This is the size that my torque wrench is. This is the size that my breaker bar is. No matter which setup you're working with, you need that large socket that takes off your front pulley nut. This is another thing that's going to help you skip taking your bike to a mechanic or taking it to a buddy of yours to borrow their socket. Go buy the socket today, have it for the rest of your life. Next specialty tool that you are definitely going to want to have on hand, almost doesn't even count as a specialty tool. It's kind of just a general tool. And that's this guy right here. This is a tap and die set. So anytime you have a thread that gets gummed up or dinged and you need to put threads back on it, this is going to be your best friend. This one right here is a cheap set that I got on Amazon. Does it work? Yes. Do I recommend getting a higher quality version? Probably. And I say probably because I can't necessarily say that this didn't work for me. I used this for my whole build and I never had a problem with it. But if I was going to buy another one, I would not buy this one again. I would probably just spend the money to get a higher quality. I hear good things about Irwin, and obviously there's much higher quality than that. This one was fine. I just wouldn't trust it to be perfectly accurate. I actually can't even find a brand. I would love to give you the brand name. I can't remember who I bought this from, and they didn't put their name anywhere on this set, which is never a good sign. So get yourself a decent tap and die set. That's another tool you'll have for the rest of your life. The next couple of tools in this list that we're going to talk about are really only relevant if you're planning on doing motor work. So if you're not going to take your motor apart yourself, that's something you're going to be dropping off at a shop. The rest of these tools you're not going to need. But like I mentioned earlier, I did a top end on my motor last summer, and I am not a motor guy. I never called myself a motor guy or a professional mechanic or anything like that. And I actually thought it was pretty easy. So let me show you the tools I needed for that. First up, we got this guy right here. This is a valve spring compressor tool. So what this does is this goes on one end of the motor, and this little foot right up here goes onto your valve guide, and it just squishes it down. You pull the keepers out, and then the valve spring comes up and out. Now that I bought from a shop out here called R&R, which is no longer in business. So I will do some digging, and I'll put a link down in the description below where you can grab a tool like that. For that one, I paid 80 bucks. That was on the low end, if I remember correctly, of what these things typically cost. But I'll put it to you this way. 1 hour of shop labor is going to be the same cost as that tool, most likely. So if you have to go and bring your bike to a shop to help them pull the valve guides, you might as well just buy the tool. In conjunction with that, when you're doing a top end and you are putting the pistons back into the cylinders, you're going to need a ring compressor tool. This is basically something that wraps around the piston and the ring, squishes them down so that they can fit up into the cylinder. A piston ring compressor tool is actually pretty inexpensive. I will again put a link to those down in the description. I actually don't have one. That's a tool I borrowed. And one rule that I have is if I borrow a tool, I am not going to borrow that tool again. So if I have to do another motor build, the first thing I'm going to be buying is a piston ring compressor tool. Now, last but not least on this list is an impact driver. Now, I am not talking about this guy. This right here is an impact made by Milwaukee. I have a drill that goes in conjunction with that set. That is a very weak impact gun, because if you watched my fork video where I struggled to get that fork cap off of the fork leg, I needed an impact, a good, high quality, high torque impact. Cannot overstate how important it is to have something like that. You're not going to use it all the time, but when you need it, it's the only thing that's going to do the job. Next category on our list is shop equipment. What I mean by this is stuff that is in your shop that makes your life easier. For this particular category, I've only got 3 essential items in here, and these again are not 100% necessary, but once you've had them in your shop and used them, you will never want to go back to working without them. The first of which you can actually see in the background of my shot, and that's this guy down here. This is the Harbor Freight Bike Lift. It is the best 300 bucks that I spent on my shop, hands down. There is no comparison. If you've been working on your hands and knees and crawling under the bike to get to things and then dragging all your tools across the floor, it is going to change your life to pick that bike up, get that thing up to chest level so you can work right in front of you. You've got a big surface where you can lay your tools down all around the bike. It is a total game changer. Wait for the sale. This bike lift will be $300 at some point, and yes, it is worth paying $300 for. Your knees and your back will thank you, and you will never want to go back to working off the floor. The next 2 pieces of shop equipment that we're going to talk about actually go hand in hand with each other, or at least in my case they do, and that is a proper workbench and a nice sturdy vise. These 2 things have changed the game for me as far as comfort and working in the shop. So my workbench is about 6 feet long and it's about 2 feet deep. It's got a shelf down below it, and I actually built this workbench out of 2x4s off of some prints that I found online. When you're not comfortable, you're a lot less likely to go down into the garage and work at all. So having a workbench and keeping that workbench clean and ready for your next project, which is also key, is a great asset to your shop. Now, in conjunction with that, I have my vise mounted to my workbench, and having a nice vise in your shop is so important. I've used it for everything from holding parts that I need to weld, and I'll actually hook my welding ground clamp right to the vise itself, clamp the part in there so it's just where I need it to be, and I'll weld it right off of the vise. I have used this vise for everything. I've also made a little jig that I use for bending sheet metal, and it's just 2 pieces that go into the vise, clamp together, and allow me to manipulate metal in and out of it. As far as finding a decent vise, this is what place I actually recommend Marketplace for. Most of this stuff, I've been describing stuff that you would buy new, but when it comes to vices, it's just so much easier to find old vices that are made well than to find newer vices that are made well, unless you're spending crazy money, which I don't recommend. So go on Marketplace, find a good, high quality, used vise in your area, add it to your workbench, and you will be very glad you did. All right, guys, last category in this list is fabrication equipment. Now, fabrication equipment could be an entire video all onto itself, and if you want to see a video like that, let me know in the comments and I will get that video made. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to touch on the high points. First on the list, the obvious one, you're going to want a welder. We're making motorcycles here. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be welded on, modified, mounts that need to be changed, so having a good welder is crucial for this. I have a whole video on getting started with TIG welding that you can check out right here if you want to look deeper into my TIG welding setup in the machines I have. But any decent TIG welder or MIG welder will suit you fine. In conjunction with that welder, the next thing you're going to want is some sort of fabrication table, preferably a metal table. One, so you don't catch it on fire when you're welding stuff, and two, because having a metal table allows you to clamp your ground clamp of your welder right to the table, and then any part you set on that table is automatically grounded and you're ready to work on it. The table that I'm using is from Certiflat. I believe their website is weldtables.com. I'll leave a link in the description to that one. You don't have to buy not that this is a super high-end table, but you don't have to buy one like this. You could buy just a basic metal table from Marketplace or from some other manufacturer, but having some sort of metal table really is going to make your life a lot easier. Next up, you're going to want an angle grinder. As you can see here, mine is a Ryobi angle grinder, nothing fancy. I think it was 40 bucks. I bought it 3 years ago and somehow the thing is still alive. So any angle grinder will pretty much do you just fine. For me, I prefer the corded versions because when it comes to batteries, angle grinders kill batteries so fast, and I just don't need one more thing in my life that I have to charge up and try to remember whether the battery is charged or if the battery was dead and is it plugged in. I don't want to deal with that. I like my corded angle grinder. I've got outlets in enough places that I can pretty much take it wherever I need to go. Next item on my fabrication tools list is a bender. Now I have a $60 Harbor Freight bender. That is not a lot of money for something that has been so handy in my shop. It is how I made this sissy bar right here out of stainless steel, and that is 9/16 stainless steel rod. Stainless steel is a lot harder to bend than mild steel, and I still did it all with that $60 Harbor Freight bender. Drilled it right into the concrete floor here in my garage, and I have been prying on that thing for years now, still haven't managed to mess it up. So really a big fan of that Harbor Freight bender. Highly suggest you pick one up. Next tool on my list is a decent drill. You can see here I've got a Milwaukee one here. It came as a Black Friday package deal, that drill and my impact. I got it from Home Depot, and I will say I would recommend getting a higher end version than the most basic one because these ones, the drive motors just aren't that strong. I'm probably going to end up replacing these, but one fabrication tool you're absolutely going to need is a drill of some sort and a decent set of drill bits. And last but not least, you are going to want a Sawzall. It is very helpful for cutting frames and cutting certain things that it's just tough to get an angle grinder into. I got a Sawzall for 60 bucks from a used tool supply store near my house. It's also in Milwaukee, and that thing is an absolute tank. All right, guys, so that is my list of tools to invest in when you're getting started in building motorcycles. The specialty tools are super handy. The hand tools are the place to put that initial money, and the other stuff will come when it comes. If you're liking these videos, make sure you click subscribe down below so you never miss a video I put out. Appreciate you guys checking out Grease's Garage, and I will catch you next week.